Hi, my name is Todd Leonard.
And my name is Herb Montgomery, and we're just talking.
We always like you to take care of that like button because you like us and to subscribe to us if you haven't done that so you get notifications each week and then hitting that bell icon. And that's, I said that wrong actually. The subscribe button is just so the our channel shows up on your feed. The bell icon is so you get a notification. You'd think I'd know that after doing this for 2 years, but I've been out of practice. We've been off for 2 weeks, so I'm rusty.
Yeah,
Anyway,
speaking of that, welcome back, Todd,
yeah,
from your
thanks.
world tour.
Yeah, good to be
It's
good. It's good to be gone, and it's good to be back.
yeah, it's good to be conversing. It's good to be just talking with you again.
Thank you. It is.
So, if you're new to this channel, each week Todd and I take a moment to talk about the upcoming weekend's lectionary reading from the Gospels. Our goal is to talk about those readings in the context of love and inclusion and social justice. Our hope is that our talking will be just talking, as in justice, and that something we say during this time as we go back and forth would inspire you along with us to do more than just talking. So, Todd, what passage are we looking at this week?
We're in John chapter 10, verses 22 through 30.
And
And
we are going, I don't know if we've been in John for a while or we're going to be in John for a while. I feel like we've been in John and we're going to be in John.
mhm,
We're in that post crucifixion, post resurrection, pre ascension,
mhm.
that liminal space there, of the in the Christian calendar.
Yep,
And John's where it's at most years there.
yep. The lectionary, when they how do I want to say this? The lectionary defaults to John when it wants to hit specific themes uh, in specific seasons. It likes John over the other gospel passages. It appears to me. That's
At least this year it does. I know it's a 3-year cycle, right?
right. But I
Maybe
feel like this happens every year. But that's
every year.
it may just be me.
Well, every year we lament. We
We do,
sorrow and lament.
we do.
And if you're a big fan of John out there, please forgive us.
Yes.
So in good Johannine fashion, this week's passage takes place during the festival of dedication at Jerusalem. They're questioning Jesus once again of whether he's the Messiah. And remember, there's a tension in the Gospel of John. What is hinted at, the anti-Semitism that is hinted at in the other Gospels, is on full display in the Gospel of John. There had become such a schism between the Christian movement and its Jewish roots and Jewish heritage, um, for various reasons. But that schism is there nonetheless, where in the other Gospels, it's more easily described as classism, where you have the
Mm-hmm.
poor Jews against the rich Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And get to John, and some people say it's just a translation, and I hear you, but there is a strong Christian versus Jew now. It's one
Mm-hmm.
community versus another community. And what I think that really is the Johannine community, the proto-Gnostic Johannine community, bumping up against the anti-Gnostic Jewish community. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I mean, we've talked at length about that in the past. But again, the question of Jesus's messiahship comes up this week, and Jesus basically says, "I already told you. I already answered this, but you didn't believe me. And the reason you don't believe me, is because you're not one of my sheep. My
Mm-hmm.
sheep know me. They hear my voice. They listen to me, and I know them, and they follow me. And I give them eternal life, and they will never perish." And again, where the synoptic gospels are about how we live in the world, so by to bring, so that God's will be done on earth, the kingdom will be done on earth as it's done in heaven. In the Gospel of John, Most of the time, it's about eternal life versus death. Gnosis, gaining this secret knowledge,
Hmm.
knowing something. Jesus came to give us this knowledge, this
Yeah,
gnosis in
knowing
John,
him as Messiah. Yeah.
right? Knowing him as Messiah, not having that knowledge, that insider knowledge, and then this assurance of eternal life. Eternal life is such a big theme in the Gospel of John, where it's not in the Synoptics. It's rarely brought up.
Mm.
But I am thankful for the context this week. I mean that comment there about being Jesus, being sheep, is a hint to Jesus being the shepherd, the good shepherd, and the good shepherd was used in multiple ways in the early Christian church. Something I found fascinating in the book Saving Paradise, and let me get the subtitle correct: How Christianity Traded Love of This World for Crucifixion and Empire. It's by Parker and Brock. It's a great book. It's not a heavy theological book. It's a treatment on the artwork in Christianity, especially the first millennia of Christianity. And what it shows is that the number one image of Jesus and all the Christian art that we have for the first millennia, whether it would be like a catacomb or some Christian, whatever structures they had, um, whatever mosaics they had. Remember, this was an largely illiterate community. The gospel was preached by listening to it being read to you from the front or through the artwork of the day. The number one theme was Jesus as the good shepherd. That the crucified Jesus, the crucifix, that imagery of Jesus that so many are familiar with today, really didn't start popping up in the artwork for 1,000 years into Christianity.
Mm.
That for the first millennia, the most popular image was Jesus as shepherd, and that's the context of our passage this week. If you zoom out from the passage we're looking at in the lectionary, Jesus is the gate through which the sheep enter. He's the good shepherd that leads the sheep. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He's come that they might have life and have it to the full. And then he says, I am the good shepherd. That's John chapter 10. That's where we're at this week. So you got any thoughts on shepherdry, and sheep?
Bah, I don't have a lot. Just that that harkens back, and I know you have some content on this that harkens back to um, the idea of the Israeli kings
Mm-hmm.
being shepherds of the people and either being good or bad depending on how they managed the nation, how whether they were corrupt themselves or not, and things like that. So that of it for me, you hear the the term shepherd, it goes it goes back to that. Obviously, for us as Christians, we've really uh, been taken in a lot by the Johannine imagery of
Mm-hmm.
of Jesus saving the sheep, of Jesus rescuing us from destruction, rescuing us from being devoured by the enemy. And so there is this very spiritualized understanding that we get with John, that it's like that if we hear the voice of the shepherd, we won't be lost to eternal destruction, but be saved. And and so that was my understanding of the shepherd imagery for the longest time until I started recognizing there was that connection back to the Old Testament prophets talking about kings as shepherds and judging the king's shepherding ability of the nation.
Mm-hmm. And again, John, I can't say this enough, is an early form of both Jewish and Christian hybrid, like a predecessor, a proto Gnostic gospel. And so, just like you just said, the shepherd imagery there is very mystical. It's very ethereal. leading us into the way of life, and you're now going to
Mm-hmm.
live on, and he's showing us the way, and that's not like the way of justice where we change the world around us. It's the way to pass through this world onto some other where we
Yeah,
experience,
that's right.
existential bliss post mortem. So yeah, but if you go back to the synoptic gospels, it taps into what exactly you're saying. That Mark, Matthew, and Luke, they use this shepherd imagery also, which says to me, this was along with Brock and Parker's research. This was the early imagery of Jesus. All the communities saw Jesus as the good shepherd, but where the Johannine had this kind of mystical view of the good shepherd, the synoptics had a very Hebrew prophetic justice tradition view of the shepherd, what you're talking about. And when the kings were to shepherd the flock of Israel, and when the society of the prophets became, and I think this is where it's relevant to us today, when the society of the prophets became an oligarchy,
Mm-hmm.
where it no longer took care of the masses as
Mm-hmm.
sheep needing a shepherd, where it fed off the masses instead to enrich themselves.
Mm-hmm.
There's an interesting passage in Ezekiel 34, 2 through 6. It says, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. It's not a religious, it's a political term. It's the kings. Prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to you, shepherds of Israel, who only take care of yourselves. Should not shepherds take care of the flock? You eat the curds, clothe yourself with the wool, and slaughter the choice animals. But you do not take care of the flock. You have not strengthened the weak, or healed the sick, or bound up the injured. You've canceled U.S. aid. You have not brought back the strays, searched for the lost. Matter of fact, you just sent them to El Salvador instead. You have ruled them harshly and brutally. So they were scattered because there was no shepherd. And when there were shepherds, but they weren't shepherds. So there was no
Uh-huh.
shepherd. And when they were scattered, they became food for all the wild animals. You made them more vulnerable. My sheep wandered all over the mountains and on every hill. They were scattered over the whole earth, and no one searched and looked for them. And so the synoptic gospels, they pick up this imagery and they say Jesus is the good shepherd that
Uh-huh.
comes back to restore safety, to restore distributive justice, to usher us into peace, to
Uh-huh.
gather the flock, and to undo all of that harm. So again, I think it's incredibly appropriate given the political landscape we're living in today.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting also just the idea, the concept of the prophetic tradition and the synoptics that they the good shepherd analogy is very much about understanding the mission of Jesus was to lead the sheep. That as a shepherd, as an actual shepherd, their response they the sheep are not expected to have individual agency to make their own decisions about the about whether or not to follow the shepherd. Just follow me here. I know
Okay, I'm with you. I'm
just give me a
following you.
second. And they it is understood that a shepherd has to corral,
Mm,
control,
mm,
guide the sheep. The shepherd has the responsibility. It is the responsibility of the shepherd to make sure the sheep are fed, watered, and safe. And then the prophets and the synoptics take that imagery and say Jesus is going to do this for us. Jesus is leading people back to a just, equitable, righteous society.
love your neighbor, golden rule.
All that stuff. Whereas John is very much about it's up to the sheep to figure out that Jesus is the
Is the
Messiah
shepherd.
and to believe in him as the shepherd in
Mm,
order for them to be protected. And it is not Jesus leading a movement, it's Jesus showing up and saying to the sheep, hey, I'm your shepherd, believe in me. Whereas the synoptics and the prophetic tradition is saying, no, this is somebody who is taking charge and leading a movement of righteousness and peace. And for Jesus, it's like, I'm here. If you want to be my sheep, you'd better listen to my voice and believe I'm the Messiah. It's a very different. There's not a movement. It's a very intellectual.
I like the way that you're describing that, and it seems too that John's more individualistic,
Mm-hmm,
where the synoptics are more societal.
mm-hmm,
You know what
mm-hmm.
I'm saying? Where
Absolutely.
you as the sheep, what you're saying is you as the sheep need to hear my voice and follow
Mm-hmm,
me. Where
mm-hmm,
Jesus was the good shepherd coming to fulfill the promises of what the shepherd would do in the Hebrew prophets, um,
mm-hmm.
in the synoptic gospels. Also, Todd, what your comment made me think of too is the location of the pasture. It's like in John, Jesus is the good shepherd showing us the way through this world to greener pastures
Mm-hmm.
elsewhere in a
Mm-hmm.
world to come, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
in the synoptics, this world is the pasture
Is
of the shepherd.
yeah.
This world is the paradise lost, paradise restored. This
Mm-hmm.
world is that which is being, or his society, or in the Hebrew prophets, Israel. It's the work of not showing us a way to somewhere else where we can be safe. It's making this place here safe once again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's well said too. Um, yeah, they talk about Jesus being the gate and the
Right.
one be entered into this safe haven away from the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the world, whereas uh, yeah, the synoptics is no, Jesus is going to make the pasture safe, and
Yeah.
it's where sheep can safely graze.
So the promise in Ezekiel, so Ezekiel has those strong words that we just read a minute ago that are just the censure of the rulers that had become oligarchs. Um, about 10 verses later, we get the promise. As a shepherd looks after his scattered flock when he is with them, so I will look after my sheep. I will
Mm,
rescue them from all the places they were scattered on a day of clouds and darkness. I will search for the lost, bring back the strays. I will bind up the injured and strengthen the weak, but the sleek and the strong I will destroy.
mm,
Talking about the oligarchs. And then he says, I
mm,
will, and this is where it really hits home, I will shepherd the flock with justice. I will
mm,
place over them one shepherd, my servant David, and he will tend them, and he will tend them and be their shepherd. So there's that it's I think it's that imagery that the synoptics were trying to tap into and saying Jesus is
mm.
the son of David, the good shepherd who's going to shepherd the flock with justice and gather in the fragments that have been scattered
Yep.
and heal and restore. And so it's actually a very positive, it's a justice imagery.
Mm-hmm.
But again, and I would be amiss if I didn't bring this up. I don't like the shepherd sheep imagery either because it means we're just being sheep. I mean, how many times has
Right.
that slur been used? Don't be a sheep.
Right. Right.
When the
Absolutely.
media and society and Fox News, whatever you want to call it, is trying to convince us that what we see isn't really what we think we see, and
Mm-hmm.
what we hear isn't really what we
Don't be a
don't be
sheep.
such a sheep.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
so so
Yeah.
there's
So I
that
mean,
there too.
you have to recognize the limitations of the metaphor, and you need to focus on. And I think too often uh, the my religious teaching growing up was that I am a stupid sheep, that I don't know
Right.
anything. and that I
Right.
don't. And so I need Jesus to rescue me because I'm just a dumb piece of livestock. Um, and
Your
I
new
think
nickname, Todd, is Lamb Chop.
that's right. That's right. That's what you can call me. And I think that's a total misunderstanding and a application of the metaphor. I think the metaphor works as the ruler of a nation, and the people are who the ruler is in charge of caring for, but
Hmm.
it doesn't mean that the people themselves are idiots and
They
unable
can
to
be.
they can be, but they don't have to be.
Right. I think the
It's not.
original imagery is exactly what you're saying. The shepherd imagery was not used to make people feel like sheep, but to remind the rulers that they had a responsibility to
Mhm.
care for those that were dependent on their power and authority, or however you want to phrase
Right.
that. They didn't have democracy back then, right? But it still
Right.
applies even to our day today. Those we put in
Absolutely.
power, they
Absolutely.
theoretically they're supposed to derive their power from us, right? From the will
Right.
of the people. And we put them in power in order to take care of us.
Yep.
And
So yeah, they do the work for us, and they're supposed to be doing it with us in mind and our best interests in mind. And yeah, and so there is, as there was with the Hebrew prophets, there is the need for the prophetic voice and the prophetic tradition to rise up now. And when we don't have just shepherds leading the flock, whether it's the president, whether it's Congress, whether it's more localized governments where you need the prophetic tradition to step up and speak out and call these people corrupt shepherds, call
mhm.
them bad shepherds. They're not doing the job that they've been elected to do.
So I was watching an interview today with the governor of Maryland. And I think Maryland is the first state to do this. If not, they're among the first states to do this, but I think they're the first one. It is actually a prerequisite now to even run for governor. If you're going to run to be elected as governor, you have to, as a condition to even putting your name on the list, put all of your assets and investments into a blind trust so
Hmm.
that you will not become wealthy off of being the governor.
Wow. Wow.
I applaud that. That's Hebrew prophetic
To,
justice tradition kind of
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's synoptics kind of stuff. That's good stuff.
Yeah. That's
In a
holding people
time where,
accountable.
yeah, in a time where Congress are trading stocks based on
Right.
insider knowledge, in a time where cryptocurrency and the president and all of his cronies have made millions since he took office just in the crypto world.
Yep.
I mean, it's I think it's cool what Maryland's doing. I think they're actually the first ones to do it. I could be wrong on that,
Well,
but I think the first
yeah.
ones that prerequisite. If you're going to even try to become the governor, everything has to be in a blind trust.
It's good. Yep. So it's good to see that some places are actually trying to do good work and hold people accountable. In my state, they're talking about rolling back the penalties for politicians receiving gifts. That there's not going to, that's what's happening in my state, is they're going to say, oh no, it's going to be, people can receive gifts, it's not a problem. That's not going to lead to anything corrupt. Why are we so bent out of shape about politicians receiving gifts from people? Well,
Right. Shame on you, Louisiana.
mm,
And as a West Virginian, I thought I would never say this, but well done, Maryland. Well done.
yeah, that's true. That's not, your rivalry would keep you from,
Neighboring state.
yeah,
But
but
no, well done.
yeah. So no, I mean, I think if you can read these passages in the light of what is what are leaders supposed to do? It's really leadership that's being called to account, and those who have more power, how are they exercising it?
Mhm.
And if not, you could, rather than Jesus saying my sheep know my voice, I would say Jesus would say my shepherds know my voice
Mm.
and they
Mm.
follow me in what I was doing. If they would follow me, then that works much better for me than Jesus saying, "No, I'm not concerned." He has no interest in the. It appears he doesn't have much political interest in the Gospel of John, and it's all about this existential,
Yeah.
mystical belief.
Well, you're in good company, Todd. You're not alone, because in First Peter chapter 5, that very imagery is used, where Peter, whoever the author of First Peter is,
Uh-huh.
says to the elders in the early, or whatever community he's writing to, the early Christian
Uh-huh.
church community that he's aiming at. He refers to those elders as shepherds who are under the chief shepherd,
Hmm.
and they're to take care of the flock, not for personal gain, but out of love,
Yeah.
wanting to serve. But there's that imagery of, you're not sheep and he's the shepherd. You're another shepherd, and you're supposed to
Right.
be listening to that chief shepherd. He's going to
Yep.
teach you how to be a shepherd.
Yep. Yeah, that's good.
So I have a
Yeah.
statement also this week that I think would probably be a good place to land. When we're talking about the to use John's imagery again, to bring it back to the Gospel of John. Um, I know we give John a hard time, but let's give John a little bit of love. Where John's, defines the good shepherd as coming that they might have life. He's not the thief that comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He's the good shepherd that has come that they might have life and have it more abundantly. Gustavo Gutierrez is reportedly, he said, and I'll put if you want the source to this, it'll be in our blog this weekend at renewedheartministries.com. But he said, to be poor is to be familiar with death. It is very easy to see these things when we are working with poor persons. They speak with familiarity about death and the deaths of children and other persons, because it is so frequent. Certainly, death is one of the aspects of human life, but I'm speaking of an early and unjust death. Poverty means physical death due to hunger, disease, and other factors. The poor are familiar with these other aspects of death. And I would add to that any type of injustice falls somewhere on death's spectrum. And so even John, who is more existential and is more, you know, mystical about Jesus's shepherdry, right? Even John attaches the shepherd to life and the
Uh-huh.
thief to death and destruction.
Uh-huh.
And what we have to realize is that justice in the earth, that's the path of life.
Right.
Injustice, oppression, poverty, all of those things, that's the way of death.
Hmm. Yep.
So even John teaches social justice this week, Todd.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked. But thank goodness. That's good.
All right. Do you have anything else this week? Welcome back. It's great to do this again. I've missed this.
Yeah, it's been a good. It's good to get back. No, I don't have anything else. I think that's a good place to stop, and um, that gives us some stuff to chew on. So that's good. So tell us about Renewed Heart Ministries.
Hey, we're still plugging right along. Renewed Heart Ministries, for those of you who are unfamiliar, we are a not for profit ministry that is dedicated, passionate about helping people find the intersection of their faith and whatever area of social justice they feel passionately about, helping them find the connection there. All of our resources online are free. You can find them at renewedheartministries.com. And the reason we're able to provide everything for free is because of our supporters. So, to all of our supporters out there, regardless of how much or how little you support, every amount counts. I just want to say thank you for your support. And if any of you out there would like to join them in supporting Renewed Heart Ministries, you can do so by just simply going to renewedheartministries.com and clicking donate. Todd, I know you've been on vacation for a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to tell us about anything?
No, just basically that I continue to be available for coaching, for life coaching, and uh, spiritual, existential questioning type of things that you may be facing, or may want, or you or someone you know may be in the process of coming out in your gender or sexuality. Those type of conversations is something I would relish to have with you, and you can learn more at tjlcc.com.
Excellent. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening this week. Thanks for checking in with us. Thanks for giving us your time. It's always a pleasure to have you here with us. And we'll see you next week.
All right.